Okay. So a very, very, very good afternoon to you all. Really lovely to see you all for this, which I think is the third. I think it's the third. Thank you all for those people who've been here regularly for the third compassion check-in. And really warm welcome for those of you who are joining us for the first time. Welcome, Karen. Welcome, Yvonne. Really lovely to see you here. These compassion check-ins I began when probably about, well, it must have been 3 weeks ago, isn't it? Or just before then, when things were really beginning to intensify around COVID-19, and where it became very clear that lots of people might be at home, or they might be feeling, or away from home actually, in isolation, where perhaps many people were feeling anxious. But also that there was a bit of a vibration, perhaps of fear, uncertainty. And so the idea of this compassion check-in is an opportunity and an invitation for us to move from anxiety to inner peace. It really is an opportunity just to pause. And I don't know if it struck anyone, but I was really clear that, and I just want to show my Nelson Mandela t-shirt for today. My idea was that I really wanted it to be at 12 noon on Wednesday, so it was the heart of the week, to bring heart at the heart of the week. It's an opportunity to connect, to be, and to breathe. Last week, we dedicated, particularly for those people who are healers, helpers, be it people who perhaps worked in, I'm just going to let somebody else into the room. Welcome to you, Iris, a very warm welcome to you. We're just muting ourselves at the moment. A really warm welcome to you. So last week was very much dedicated to those people who perhaps carers, healers, nurses, doctors, but those people also just supporting other people. And a theme came up last time, and I can't remember whose suggestion it was. It might be somebody who's on the line at the moment, that we dedicate, there was a conversation that ensued around education, development, our younger generation, which Dr. Martin was Rob talked about. And we thought that the theme today very much around inspiration, around empowerment, and around involvement. But there might be all sorts of other things that bubble up for us during the course of today. But I just want to welcome you all, and I'm going to invite you to, because it feels strange, I'm now going to invite you to unmute yourselves. And I wonder if, I want to kind of invite us maybe to do with actually one thing. I want to invite us to start off with just, literally it's going to be just a minute silence, just to give us a moment just to be and just to breathe. If you're wanting to, by all means, close your eyes so you can just be with yourself, with your own thoughts. Let's just take a minute here in silence. Hey, welcome, and welcome to those who joined us during our minute silence. So Olivia and Frank, so sorry that hope you got a few seconds of silence, and lovely welcome, so glad to see you here. Iris, welcome to you also. If you're wanting to, Frank and Iris, feel free to, click on the video thing so we can see your wonderful warm faces to join us here. And welcome again, everyone. Really glad to see you here. For me, there's something about seeing people's faces and seeing people's energy that's really, really, really magical. Anyone want to kind of kick us off? Welcome, Frank.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, it's you, Frank.
Yes, it is, Rob.
When I saw Frank's iPad Pro, I thought, that sounds like Frank Monroe.
Funny.
One love, brother. One love, one love, one love.
So it seems to me as though there seems to be a theme of friendliness, of interconnectedness. Isn't it wonderful? Dr. Martin, you kicked it off when you said, I just want to say hello to the people I've met here, first time a few times, and those people who are here afresh. And there's something kind of lovely about that. Maybe, I guess, there is a theme during this time when we're all in lockdown. We're either connecting to those people we know already who perhaps we can't see in person, and there's been a lot of reconnecting to people from the past, right? I wonder if anyone wants to kick us off with any thoughts that they have either on that or on our theme today, which is all around inspiration, involvement, engagement. Anyone want to kick us off with anything that's come to their mind or anything that they're wanting to share?
I'll kick off.
Oh, Karen.
I was going to say it's lovely to see two people I haven't seen for a very long time. So Yvonne, hello, and Rob. I'm meeting new people, seeing Olivea. Feels very warm and lovely.
So, you know, that's really lovely. So then again, isn't it interesting that we often that thing where we don't know who you don't know? You know, there's all those different, oh, I didn't know that person knew that person. Thanks so much for saying that.
It's so important about 6 degrees of separation, that we all know each other. You know, just put that piece there and then you think, oh, you know her. Yeah, oh, I know, I've known her for 5 years. It's like, you know, I've known her since I was a child. And you think, how the hell did you know her since you were a child? And we met 3 years ago and you didn't tell me that you know. So, you know, the 6 degrees of separation sometimes, well, particularly in the UK, a much smaller country, can sometimes just be 4 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
And there's something of an irony in that, Dr. Martin, in that it should be a virus and instructions around social distancing that should then bring us, at least us, in this meeting together.
Very well said, Rob. Yes, indeed. Because I think we're seeing at this moment in time compassion, generosity, kindness, inspiration, consideration from total strangers who just happen to live across the street, who just happen to live 3 doors away, and you thought, well, I never talk to him. You know, I don't like his coat. I don't talk to her because he's always rushing through the street and she never says anything to me. But you don't know that she may be rushing to get her train. You don't know that that's the only coat I've got because I don't have the money to stay in fashion. So many things about our lives are just unspoken, and we don't think about it until we're actually asked to think about, how is it that we're only just talking? You know, hello, neighbor. You know, oh, hello. You know, I've seen you for years and you've never spoken to me, but, you know, you always seem so interesting. You're always rushing off somewhere. And you think, oh, my God, I'm sorry. Hi. It's just too wonderful.
And I think some of the, I was having a discussion with Olivea, funny enough, we were talking about how the language, you know, some of the language that's being used, and actually, is it social distancing? Is that the right term? Because Olivea and I were saying, it's physical distancing we're being asked to do. We're being asked to make sure that physically we don't come into contact with each other unless it's family members. But in terms of, you know, the social, are we distancing ourselves, or is it that what we're actually doing now is finding different ways to be social, if that makes sense? So, yeah. You know, the fact that we're using Zoom all means that we can have that social connection. What it doesn't mean is that I can put my finger on the screen now, can't I? Or try and put my finger on the screen, and I can't really touch you, so it doesn't feel real. So it's about, I find that physical distancing much more of a challenge in a way than I do the social. But what I'm finding with the social is that I'm having to be a little bit more possibly disciplined and ordered, you know, making sure that I'm still connected, you know, with people, that I find ways on a regular basis to have a conversation, because normally what I would do is I would meet up with people.
I think what I've noticed is when I'm out and about doing my walk, and I'm trying to put distance between myself and somebody else approaching me, what I am noticing is in almost every instance, people will smile and acknowledge you, whereas before they wouldn't even look at you.
Especially if you live in London.
Interesting, isn't it? It's interesting, isn't it? And I guess all sorts of new ways of communicating or acknowledging or smiling or having to negotiate around each other and all of this stuff that's happening. Let's welcome somebody else who's coming in. I just want to invite you all to think a little bit about, and welcome Movell and Iris. I'm also keen to know if you can hear us okay. I just want to invite you, I wonder, today's theme, inspiration, empowerment, involvement. I wonder what that means to you, and I wonder if, with all of you who are on this call at the moment, you're all people who, in different ways, hold space, empower, train, develop, enable others. And yeah, Dr. Martin, please.
Rasheed, would you just ask everyone to say what they do so that
Lovely.
we know it? We know.
Let's do that. Maybe if you've all got this grid view, maybe we can all just very, very briefly in a sentence, and just say who we are and what we do. And I know, Rob, with all of your titles, Rob Neil OBE, that's a challenge. We can start with you.
Rasheed, just say I don't have a grid view because I'm doing this on my iPad.
Neither
Okay.
do I.
So if you just let us know when we indicate coming.
Okay, we'll start with Rob, who's at the top left for those of us who have a grid. If you
You should be able to get a grid view on an iPad. I'm on an iPad.
Is there something that you press, Karen, in particular?
Yes, well, in mine, it's on the left-hand side.
Yeah,
and you've
I've
got the
got the
option
grid.
of a main speaker view or grid view.
I've got the grid view now. Yeah, it's on the left-hand side.
Okay, so over to you, Rob.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Karen. Okay.
My name's Rob. I'm a career civil servant. I'm in my 37th year as a civil servant now. I've worked at a few departments, Ministry of Justice and Department for Education currently. I'm also a qualified trainer and facilitator. So I'm blending my career and moving into that space as a consultant over the next 6 to 12 months.
Wonderful. I'm Rasheed, and if those of you who've got grid view, you know me, coach, speaker and author and host of these sessions. And next, Dr. Martin.
Can I just quickly say, Rash, mine was under 60 seconds.
Well done.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
You're timing yourself.
Oh yeah, I definitely want it under 60 seconds. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Martin.
Okay, I'm a former university professor of cultural studies. Currently, I am in the position of placing international students into their new careers as interns and entry roles. I am also a novelist. I write romantic fiction and crime novels. When I'm not doing that, I listen to music. My life would be empty and void without music. And that actually gives me enormous power in connecting with people and understanding what their level is. You know, we all have a level in our lives that enables us to connect. And music really does that for me.
Wonderful. Let's head down to Karen.
Me. So I'm up in the left-hand corner, top. In recent years, I'm in Derbyshire, and I think, are you all in London?
Yeah.
So I feel very blessed that I'm in the countryside. But over the last year, I've been developing my spiritual practice, and I just finished a 6-month meditation course, and really taken up yoga in a big way, which is helping me. And I'm the director of Interchange People Development, which some of you know, which is blossoming and very nourishing to work with a team of associates for that. And I feel my main contribution during this time is to, and this is sort of influence from the meditation, is raising a positive vibration as a sort of counterweight to fear and uncertainty. And I feel my responsibility is to be as peaceful and positive as I'm able.
Wonderful. Yvonne.
Oh, hi, it's Yvonne. I'm a career civil servant too. Come April 2021, I would have been in the service for 35 years. So on the tail end of my 34th. Thank you, Dr. Martin. I presently work in the diversity, inclusion and wellbeing team, have specific responsibility with 2 others on race matters. My background is in training and development, so have training practice, MBTI, and so on. And yeah, just trying to get a grip with this new landscape, because I think most people know here, but not all. I've also now got my 78-year-old dad lives until the foreseeable future. So that has changed our landscape somewhat, with a 23-year-old in the house too.
Yeah. Darren.
Yes, I'm Darren Sylvester. I'm a solicitor, got 17 years in the legal profession. Rasheed was very helpful in 2016 in assisting me setting up my own practice, which was 4 years old yesterday. And outside of that, I'm a charity trustee.
Absolutely.
And outside of that, I'm a charity trustee and a former school governor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And if we head down, Frank.
Governor. School governor.
School governor.
Thank you, Rob.
Sorry, did you say me, Rasheed?
Yes, please, Frank.
Hi, hi everyone. Frank Munro, former BBC engineer, latterly 22 years in the civil service. I work in public appointments at the moment, which is the arm of the Ministry of Justice, which recruits people for arm's length bodies like the Parole Board and Sentencing Council. Like some of the others on here, music is my passion. I could talk about it till the cows come home. I'm also an audiophile and a car nut. Also former school chair of governors and magistrate.
Wonderful. Wow. Wow. And Olivea.
Hi, is my mic on?
Yeah, nice and nice.
Okay.
We can't hear a word you're saying. We can't hear a word.
Yes, I know that's hard to believe because I'm rather fabulous.
Know it, honey, know it.
She knows it, doctor. She knows it.
Yeah.
Wait.
Movell, feel free to unmute your mic, and it'll be lovely to hear your introduction.
Hi everyone. So I'm Movell, a former civil servant, now working for the FCA, heading up a D&I team there. So I lead on strategy, implementation, and design, program design, staff networks, and a range of different things. Like Rob, I am transitioning out of that and into working full-time for myself. So I'm currently working a day and a half a week in my own business. So I have a D&I consultancy, but I'm also an executive coach specializing in strengths coaching. Outside of that, I have been a school governor, not currently. Also been a board member of the Greenwich and Lewisham Young People's Theatre, because theatre and the arts is something I'm quite passionate about, along with music like everyone else. What else? I'm a trained barrister, not practicing, but I'm a trained barrister. And the most important job of all, I'm a mum to an 18-year-old who's about to head off to university. She's currently languishing in her room in bed because she's enjoying the fact that she hasn't got exams to study for. So
Wonderful. And Iris, my friend, I don't know if you can hear us. I think you're on your iPhone. So if you can unmute yourself, it'd be lovely to hear from you. And if you've got the camera, it'd be lovely to see you too. Can you hear us, Iris?
Yes, I can hear you. But wait just a minute for me to put the camera. I'm going to go to my office now.
I need to see you because you're so magical.
Oh, thank you. That's good. I can see some familiar faces there. I'm going to my office now. I just had to finish some work.
So just as I'm just going to fill in some time as you're finding your camera. So tell me when you've clicked your camera. But just hearing all the other introductions, our theme around involvement, inspiration and empowerment is really relevant because it's something that you all do. And it would be really interesting your thoughts about that right now, what it is that you yourselves need and what it is that you're observing around you. So Iris, do you want to introduce yourself? Computers
Sorry, the computer. Sorry.
Iris, introduce yourself just whilst it's loading up.
Oh, do I have to?
Okay. Don't worry. When you're ready, we will just see your fabulous face and then you can introduce yourself then. So anyone want to kick us off on this theme? Because Martin, it may even be you who mentioned this topic last time.
Well, first of all, Rasheed, I've noted that all of us are caregivers. You know, in different ways, we are all caregivers. And so I think we need to sometimes, you know, just look inward and remember that we're all giving something of ourselves every day in some way. And that's something to feel very good about, you know, and particularly when you're asking yourself, what can I do? We're already giving something. I really should say hallelujah to all of you. I
think thanks very much for that. It's interesting. One of the things that I've observed is that one of the hats I also wear that some people don't know is that where I live, I also play a role I chair one of our committees in terms of the local housing group where we all live. And I've been very mindful about listening about involvement, empowerment, inspiration. I've realized that my role has become even more important. We live in a community where we've got lots of people who are older, lots of people who are more vulnerable. And so we've been very mindful about what kind of support we might need to kind of mobilize. And so it's brought with it all sorts of challenges. And also I've kind of realized that I need to carve out some time for that particular role. I've been very, very mindful that, you know, for me, one of the things I've been very mindful is this thing about stepping up, raising the game. You know, it's a time whereby one's got to raise the game, but also I've got to be very aware that some people may not be. It's an interesting time, isn't it? Because it's a time where some people might be unwell, some people might well be in isolation. So I'm also very aware that it's a time in which more people might need to be taking up even more responsibilities. And that brings with it all sorts of kind of challenges, isn't it? I mean, I was struck by, for example, what you were saying, Yvonne, in there that now also, isn't it, that during this particular period of time, you've got all the things that you're doing, but also the household has changed shape in this particular period of time as you've got your father with you and so on. So there's more responsibilities, perhaps more roles that we're carrying out right now. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in there.
And I agree with you. I think the challenge, it's funny because there's a challenge, but there's also inspiration. So I know that a few people that are within this grid will know some of my challenges. And I've had conversations with them about that in relation to the relationship with my dad, which is a good one. It's a great one. But obviously having him in the house now, there's closer proximity, because before there was a bit of a distance in relation to the relationship. So I'm having to rethink certain things. I'm having to take time and consider and reflect when he speaks to me and asks certain things. But I'm also, I must say, inspired. I won't tell him this too often because his head's big enough as it is already. Don't tell him I told you that. But I am inspired by him because, you know, at 78, at the moment, he's getting up every day. He's going out into the garden, and he's helping me get our garden sorted, which has been a jungle for the longest time. But he's taking time out of his day, and he's spending maybe 3 to 4 hours out there, and he's just gradually working his way through the garden. So I'm inspired by the fact that there are times I can get slightly agitated, irritated by some of what he does and how he does it. But actually, you know, for a man who over to this country in 1959, he's doing great things, you know, in terms of what his world is like and how the world has just rapidly changed. And he's, you know, he's taking on some of that. And I'll just, before I finish, I'll give you one more example. He does use a smartphone, and he's had one of these smartphones for quite a long time. So he had a conversation with his granddaughter, Naomi, and within 2 twos, she had helped him to get a new package contract, because he was on a pay-as-you-go and paying too much for that. So she got him a contract. He's now got a new Samsung A51. And you can't get the brother off the phone.
Lovely. You know what's lovely about that? That is a lovely everyday example of our theme of inspiration and empowerment and involvement. Isn't it really interesting? He's inspiring. You know, he's inspiring. You're finding him inspiring at this particular time. And then that lovely thing with him, his granddaughter, your daughter, you know, and then that empowerment, oh, let's just sort this up, let's upgrade that. And when you were talking about inspiration there, and I was just thinking about that word, I can't but think about my mother, who's quite just the most remarkable person I've met and I know. But one of the things that really struck me recently during this particular period of time, she's one of those people who's so, you know, those people who are, maybe many of you will know people like this, who are so solid. They are consistent. She's consistent. So even during all of this kind of stuff, she's consistent. She's unfazed by it. So there's something about those people who are really inspiring, you know, those people who are quietly inspiring, that they've, especially those people who've seen a lot and have been through all sorts of challenges, they don't jump up and down about it, but there's something so inspiring about them. And I find those people, especially you know, many of us are lucky. We've got lots of roles where there's all sorts of plaudits, or, you know, we speak, we train, we do this and we do that. Great. But I'm really inspired by those people who nobody would know anything about, but they are just quietly incredibly inspiring. Those people I take so much inspiration from.
But I think that's what makes women amazing. That, you know, I just have to do this because the kids, my husband, my sister, my uncle, my auntie, my nephew, and no, I'm not even listening to that. I told you to shut up already. Or come tell me something, I'm listening. No, you're still not talking to me. I can remember my mother, my grandmother, my grandaunt. I mean, all these women just completely dominated in personality everyone they were married to or everyone they were involved with. You know, you're thinking, you know, oh, what was it about Uncle so-and-so? It's like, oh, no, I don't remember. It's like, you know, and his wife, oh, her, oh my God, you know. It's just one of the things that makes women so amazing is that they have that solid energy and determination to make sure, as my mother used to say to me, you are my son, and that means you are going to be wonderful. Repeat after me, I am wonderful. And I heard that from a very early age. And one of the reasons why, you know, school in Britain and not feeling taken care of or feeling ignored or whatever, I always knew, for example, that I don't care what that woman up there is telling me in all of her blondness. I know what I've been told by my mother, and I know from the things that I've been reading that's been given to me by members of my family, it builds a backbone in every young man who wants to succeed. And that's a tremendous drive as a youngster to actually overcome some of the things that a lot of young teenage boys just do not overcome these days. And we're talking about self-confidence and resilience and stamina, fortitude. And I think without a doubt, so many men get that from their mother and not their father.
Mm. It's an interesting thought, because when you were saying that, one of the things that jumped out to me, isn't it? I hadn't expected to kind of go there, but the two things that jump out to me from that. One is that, particularly in a time like this, the energy that we would call, let's call it broadly speaking, female energy. I'm going to call it female energy, you know, compassion, caring, kindness, whether it's coming from male or female, is incredibly important right now in a world where so often things are combative. So that energy, I think, is really, really important. But the other thing that strikes me from what you were just saying, Dr. Martin, linking from last time, where there was a conversation about education and developing our new generation, people often, there's a conversation often about that in the home and whether, let's say, both parents were there or whether there was a male influence. But often what's not talked about is often the power of the maternal, let's call it the maternal influence, the magic of that, how important that is. So there were just a number of things that those are the two things that jumped out to me there about, linked to what you had said and that thing around inspiration. Anyone got anything that they're wanting to share, or anything that's just arising for you? And it could be just anything at all.
Well, I'd like to just go back to the point about us, most of us, it would seem, having care responsibilities or being caregivers. My mum, I looked after her for nearly 20 years before she passed a couple of years ago, along with my dad. And
we need to.
Sorry, no, yeah. Somebody's trying to call me. That's another point I'll raise. Hold on just a moment. Yeah, but she used to say, you don't invite Doc Fistumel and have water to wash your buck. And for those who are
not familiar with patois.
For those who are not familiar with the patois, it basically means that you need to be able to have something before you invite others, to swim in your pond. And caregivers are, notoriously used to giving of themselves to the point of depletion. So it's just a word of encouragement, really, to not feel guilty or compromised or conflicted about taking time out for you.
Very important.
And to invest in yourself. There's an African saying about the stronger the tree, the better the fruit. So if you want to genuinely continue to be a caregiver in whatever capacity you're doing that, you have to invest in yourself, because once you're completely, depleted, then whatever it is you have joy when you're giving, you become less able to do that, and then you become conflicted about that, and then it's this endless cycle. So that was the first thing. Second point was that now that people know I'm at home, my phone don't stop ring. And it's a blessing, because I spend a lot of time caregiving over the phone, and just sometimes just listening, and not advising, but sometimes just listening, because that's one of the biggest forms of caregiving I think you can do, especially in this time of crisis for some, where they are inundated with lots of information, overwhelming information, lots of negativity, conspiracy theories, end of the world predictions, etc. And people are genuinely worried and fearful. And to be able to be that calming influence, to be able to say, I hear you, you're going to be okay, what can I do to help? Is, again, it's a wonderful place to be, and we shouldn't underestimate our capacity to be able to touch people without touching people.
Olivia, what you're saying there is so powerful, because I think there are so many things in there. That thing about the caregiver being mindful about the care that they themselves need and taking that time is so important. And then I loved what you were then talking about, how about that holding space and that the power of listening. And it's very apt for me. I've just been putting together, some of you might know, I used to be a Samaritan volunteer. I used to be the co-director of Samaritans in Central London. I've just been setting up in the area that I live, just working on developing a listening, a befriending program where we're going to be getting people from the, to listen and befriend and so on and support. And that thing that you're saying about that power of listening. And also that point that you made about that people who are caregivers to be very careful, the danger that they could become depleted. And suddenly, as you were saying that, I was thinking, if you're at the top level, the Prime Minister, you know, you can be whoever you think that you are. And all of a sudden, if you're not careful, you don't watch out for your energy levels, whoever you are, they can suddenly, especially in challenging times like this, they can go from 90% to 5% very, very quickly in this very changing, challenging times that we live in. So being very mindful. So there's that, for me, it brings up that thing about the importance of involvement and empowerment. So I'm really keen that next time we talk particularly about leadership, but I think there is that thing about how do we involve others? How do we empower others so that other people can also hold this space? I think is really, really important. That's one of the things that, you know, comes up for me, and how is it that we develop others? And that phrase you touched on last time, Dr. Martin. Iris, I'm going to invite you, anything that you want to say, anything that strikes you from this conversation so far, and tell people who you are.
Oh, thank you. Well, I know that normally when we are in this situation, we tend to look at the situation like we've heard a lot of stories of other people being, you know, caring for other people and all that sort of thing. Perhaps one thing that I could add is what do you feel when you are cared for? Because here I am very healthy, you know, if I didn't have cystic fibrosis. And because I have cystic fibrosis, I am in this very vulnerable group, which then changed totally the behavior that my husband has towards me. And I tell him, you know, he's probably loving that because he's just being my hero all the time. You know, he goes out, he does everything, but it's a very strange space to be in, to be cared for. It's not only him, all my friends, you know. Last week, out of nothing, some of my friends started, we just had a conversation in WhatsApp. Then all of a sudden, a group of over 20 friends that it was in that WhatsApp conversation is starting just putting images of themselves with me and then saying, oh, you know, we are there with you, just be careful. And the concern that I have from all these friends, and friends that normally we don't talk that much, but they know that I have the condition. And then they ring, and it's quite a strange situation because normally I am the one that go after, you know, looking after everybody. And now I am finding that everybody wants to look after me and remind me to be careful, to be at home. And that for me, it was quite inspiring, you know, because, and it made me feel empowered in one way, because I actually felt, oh wow, I have a lot of people that want me to go, you know, to go through this without being ill, which is, you know, normally they just know me as the healthy person because it's not part of my life. I don't carry like a flag, oh, I am ill and oh, I have a condition. And I found that actually it inspired me more to try to find ways that I can help other people. Wow. And one of the things that I've done since the last time that we've talked here, I contacted some of the groups of cystic fibrosis in Brazil, because in Brazil you don't have as much information as you have here. And with the NHS, I received so much information, and I also, that's another area that I feel looked after. And then I think, well, what can I give people now, you know, because I just cannot go physically, but actually I can share information. And I think that inspired by all the behavior of my friends, I think that empowered me to, you know, to be a bit more bold in trying to offer help, because I am very happy to help, but I am not exactly a person that go there and say, oh, you know, do you want this? I just think, well, if you want my help, you just come and I will give my help. So I don't know if that you know, adds another side to the
It
conversation.
certainly
But, you
does.
know,
Yes, it does.
being looked after is amazing. And it's quite, you know, then I think, oh, what should I do? You know, and with my friends, sometimes I don't ring them because I don't want them to think that I am lonely, because I'm not lonely. I am used, when I have exacerbation, I am used to stay at home for 2-3 weeks, just looking after my health. But I don't want them to think that I'm a weight on their lives. And but then, yeah, like the other lady said, I have a lot of friends ringing all the time. I'm being very busy. You know, we talk a lot, and I listen to them a lot, because what they're going through is staying at home or all the time with the children. I don't have children, so they feel very comfortable to talk to me about the challenges of being a mother in this situation. And it's quite interesting, you know. Yeah, perhaps that I will leave it there.
No, wonderful. Really wonderful. I thought that I was very struck by what you're saying about that thing about being cared for. And just before I bring in Dr. Martin, I was sort of struck by, there was a day, you know, I had to put myself into self-isolation because somebody might, you know, cutting a long story short. So I had to put myself in self-isolation, and we're all now in self-isolation. And my sister then just dropped off some food. You know, this was a couple of weeks ago. And that little, because I wasn't able to get to the family house, that little act of her bringing round some of my mum's jollof rice was incredible. The fact that she had got into her car, and particularly somebody who's always there for everyone else, that little act, I didn't often feel that. And there's something quite powerful and profound about that, and allowing ourselves to let others do is very powerful. Dr. Martin.
Yes, you're talking about letting people in, aren't you? And because you're giving advice, you're giving guidance. There's so many things that you give out. Sometimes it can just be an adjustment to actually have somebody give you something. So that's a keen point. One of the things that I've done over these, let us say, the past 3 weeks, is that some years ago, I'm always writing lists because I love them. And I listed my 100 favorite albums. And in doing that, because it's such a conversation piece, I decided to actually go public and share it. And on my list of 100 favorite greatest albums of all time, there is the most extraordinary woman that ever opened her mouth to sing, and that is Aretha Franklin. And this album, Jump to It, is one of my favorites. And then it has a joint spot, but my favorite album of all time is Stevie Wonder's Inner Visions.
Mine too.
This is just such an incredible album, if only for whichever track you want to name, but there is a moment where he says, "People hand in hand have I lived to see the milk and honey land, where hate's a dream and love forever stands, or is this a vision in my mind?" And the lyrical poetry, and I think the philosophy of truth that is actually on this extraordinary album, speaks to me, and has since 1973 when it came out, and it is always a part of my life. What I found is that many people, they send me back a message to say, I hadn't heard that album, or I knew of it, but I didn't know it. And it brings about a conversation of awareness and self-awareness. It brings a conversation about musicality, about cultural identity as someone who is American, European. Oh, I saw Stevie Wonder and it was, and there are so many different conversations about music, what it means to them, how it inspires them. And I absolutely believe to my dying day that music and the voice of poetry, philosophy, politics, sociology, and love that we hear in the lyrics of so many great composers, music writers, they have a message to tell us, and it speaks to us on a very deep spiritual level. And that's one of the reasons why my list of 100 favorites. And many years ago, you and I first spoke about this, Rasheed, and I do believe that you filmed it. So, You know, I haven't just come up with it. It's been in my life for many years. What are the thoughts of other people?
I'm glad you said that, because, and it's interesting here with Karen, who's taken singing, and Olivia with the poetry and with music and so on. It's interesting, times like these, often people find themselves drawn to music, to singing, to word, to writing, to poetry, to journaling. Anything you want to add there about how that sustains us, how that often really deeply inspires us? Anything you want to say about that?
I can jump in.
Oh, please.
I go for an hour walk every morning or during lunchtime. And before that, as Rob will tell you, I've got a really massive music collection. I said music's my passion, but what I do every morning before I go, I make up a new playlist of what I want to hear for that journey to get me in the right mindset. So when I actually get back, so it could be jazz, R&B, you name it, but it depends on what frame of mind I get up in, and I think what I need to drag me through the day.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Anything you want to add to that, Olivia? I can just see the lovely warm smile there, and Karen. Anything you both want to say about this now that we're this role of words, music, sound? Yeah.
Well, I've just been commissioned to write some micro poetry for a band who are able to meet regularly, obviously, at the moment, but they want to keep their Insta page alive. And so I've had to I've written 60 so far, and they're taking them in batches of 10 to just, as I say, keep their page alive. And it's been really inspirational for me to find a way to communicate about music in every poem. It's been a bit of a challenge, but essentially my mandate is to touch people, as I said before, touch people without touching people, to hear people without hearing people, and to see people without seeing people. And that's what I'm using my poetry to do. And I think music does that. You know, when you think about someone and the melody comes to mind, like Dr. Martin has just shared with us, and you send something out, you're touching people without touching them. And the fact that you've considered that it might lift somebody, it might help somebody, it might empower somebody, is you hearing them before they've even spoken. It's you understanding where they are and reaching out and hearing them and meeting that need. And the same, as I say, our senses, if, you know, we can't afford to be limited to just what our senses are saying. And I think music, poetry, or any kind of creative expression allows us to transcend the senses, and we travel and we communicate and we connect.
So glad you said that.
Just to connect, Olivia, with what you just said, after this came out, 3 days later, Stevie Wonder was involved in a car collision where logs of wood came rolling off of the back of the truck, smashed through the window of the car that he was in, hit him, and he was unconscious. And there was the question, would he survive? You know, he was in hospital, he was in coma, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that somebody did to help to bring him back was to play this album to him. They played Higher Ground to him. By playing this, they saw that his physical movements actually started up again. I'm so darn glad he let me try it again, because the last time on earth I lived a whole world of sin. I'm going to keep on trying till I reach my higher ground. Just a moment. Just a moment. That's just so amazing. Give me a second. Okay. what I find extraordinary is that if you doubt the power of music, people have been on their deathbed and played the music and they come back. Not just this composer and playing him his own music, but you know how music is used therapeutically in medicine,
Yeah.
how music is used therapeutically in so many levels of our lives, which is why I think one of the reasons why I've never been depressed in my life. I always use music to inspire me. It may be the voice of Aretha Franklin and what she has to say. It may be jazz composers from Duke Ellington to Miles Davis, you know. It may be the spoken words that one hears. I remember growing up and listening to the album of Dr. Martin Luther King's speeches. And even though I couldn't read through all the books fast enough, I had his spoken word on record that I would listen to. And it gave me the education that my school wasn't giving me because, you know, I was just some black kid that, you know, will most probably end up working for London Transport. And I knew their perception of me. And when I think of the people who have become solicitors in my family, Darren, hello. When I think of the people who have become highly professional, including my sister, who, when I talk about my PhD, she turns on the light in the cabinet in her front room that shows her MBE, Member of the British Empire, from the Queen. My sister was someone who was awarded that some years ago. And she'll turn on the light in her cabinet and then she'll say to me, "Oh, you were saying?" And I will tell her, "Bitch, turn the light off." And I just love her for that moment of, you know, you're not the only achiever in the family. I have done something, and I know that you work and you educate, and I'm one of the team that wrote the Equality Act. She was one of the people that wrote the Equality Act of 2010. She was one of the team that was on that. So in so many ways and in so many variances, music, in terms of an inspiration, you know, you want to work in social care, you want to be an artist, you want to be in medicine. I can think of, there's no subject that music hasn't touched. And so often our inspiration comes that way. And that's why it's important to me. And I can see on your faces, you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that, I mean, it's very spooky you should mention this. I've just been doing a series of interviews with scholars and musicians around music and its impact and how it can be used to bring people together. Isn't it interesting during this period of time where people have been in isolation, the number of people who've taken to singing and what artists have been doing online, when people are doing the clapping thing for nurses and so on, they're chanting, they're clapping, they're making noises, they're connecting as human beings. I think that the stories in places like Italy of the singing and all of that kind of stuff, the healing, the nurses and the doctors, the people who are singing, that connection, that deep ability. And I love the thing that you were saying there, Olivia, about that beyond often the words and everything else, the way that in which that can connect with us. I know that, Karen, you've been drawn in recent times to music, to singing. Anything you want to say about that? And I'm also keen to turn to Movell. Anything you're keen to say about that? Because also what's interesting, I think, about choir singing is that suddenly you've got a collective, the choir, the call and the response, the group, and that involvement and what we can do as a group. That's very, very, very powerful. Anything anyone wants to share, or Karen, Movell, anything you're wanting to throw in, or Yvonne or Darren?
Right, I just want to say that I've joined in a chanting class every week now, which is very beautiful. And we, I don't know if it will come over on the audio, but we learnt a song which I thought was gorgeous. Shall I just try and play?
Please. I thought you were going to sing it for us. We're ready.
Well, I am, sort of. Your heart is my heart. My heart is your heart. And your heart is my heart. My heart place of my heart. Did that come across?
Yes. What a beautiful offering. I love that sentiment. My heart is your heart. And I love the way it resonates there. There's something, isn't it? Music just hits you there, bypasses, isn't it? It's there. Movell, I could see that nodding there. Anything you want to add at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said in terms of music and the power of it. What was kind of coming home to me in terms of music was the power of it to evoke memory and feeling. My dad and my sister both passed away respectively 2 years and 4 years ago. And my sister was a huge music fan. And so whenever I want to kind of recall feeling or particularly special feelings about her, there'll be songs that I play because they're the songs that remind me of her. And it takes you right back to a moment and a place in time. For me right now, music is probably something that I kind of take solace in and take comfort in, because as Olivea was referring to earlier on in terms of being a carer, so my sister had multiple sclerosis and my dad had Alzheimer's. So I was a part-time carer for both of those people and experienced periods of depletion because I gave all to them. And so that's something I'm very careful to not do now. And so for me, music is a kind of catalyst for rest and relaxation, along with meditation. I meditate daily and I journal daily. And so those are things for me that are periods of recovery. And I use that. It's really important for us all to kind of take that time to recover before we can pour into other people. And as a coach, you spend a lot of time absorbing not just the words of people, but their energy. And so if you don't have your own energy correct, which is part of the reason I meditate daily, if you don't have your own energy correct and in balance, you can't provide the level of support and care for other people that you would like to. And also it's almost, there's a protective barrier as well. If you get your own energy right and protected, when you're absorbing that energy from other people, oftentimes it's a lot of kind of sad, negative energy because they're coming to you for help with a particular problem. You need to have that protective barrier, that layer between yourself and them that allows you to then take stock of what they're saying, but not absorb it to your inner core. So for me, you know, a lot of the time I'm spending now, my travel time that I would use traveling up to Stratford for work, is spent in meditation practice and journaling. And I'm loving that. And the other thing I'm trying to do to kind of stay in check and make sure that I'm able to empower myself and my daughter and others is to kind of limit my consumption of the negativity around COVID-19 in particular. I think in the first week that we were home, I spent so much time reading news articles and listening to different stories. And then I moved from there into kind of anger with a lot of what's happening in terms of government. And I took stock one day and realized that actually my temperature and my kind of blood pressure was constantly raised because of that. And that kind of took away from the opportunity that I'm having now to see this time as a blessing. I mentioned before that my daughter's 18 and she's getting ready to go off to university, and her two choices of university are either Manchester or Brighton, so she's not going to be in the home. So I decided that actually, instead of spending my days talking about this and being really negative, I would actually tune into that and understand that this is an opportunity for me to spend some time with my daughter that I wouldn't otherwise have. She's out of the house all of the time. So now we have concentrated periods of time in the house. It's time for me to spend that time understanding her, learning her, strengthening our relationship before she goes out into the wider world. So for me, this time is a blessing. And that's what I'm trying to the message I'm trying to portray to people that I'm working with in terms of coaching and stuff whilst we're in this time, is to stop looking at the negatives of it and try to find some of the positives that you can take from it. Whether that be to learn new things or to kind of spend time in self-reflection.
Movell, I just love what you said, because for me, as you were talking about that, from how you nourish and take care of your own self and your own well-being, and are aware of that, which I really do feel that when Yvonne and when Olivea were talking, that was one of the first threads that I was picking up. Then I love the way that you were talking about your own practice, but then I love then that bit that when you linked it to where your daughter's at, and that time, that quality time, and appreciating this time. And for me, that thing around empowerment and involvement, I love the fact that you know, because people could just miss that opportunity. It's, oh yeah, we're all stuck under the same roof and well, we've got, but here's this wonderful opportunity before they head off to university, head off into their own lives, to really bond, to enrich, to share, to connect. And I think there is something magical about that. We've all got this incredible opportunity now to really connect, to share, to empower, to support, and be there for one another. It is an absolute, you're absolutely right. It's an absolute.
Absolutely. It's a time of replenishment. And I was reading that I think in China, where we, as we know, they have massive problems with pollution, the fact that everyone has been indoors has given, you know, the country and the earth and the environment time to replenish. So I think that we need to be looking at that for ourselves as well, seeing this as a time of replenishment for us, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. This is a time for us to take in self-reflection, in meditation, whether that be through music or through meditation or through yoga, whatever you choose to do.
Yeah.
The time for us to take advantage of that self-reflection.
Wonderful.
And so like Movell, and thanks for that, Movell, because you've just triggered something in me that's just reminded me about, you know, spending time with the children, even though, you know, they're becoming young adults. So one of the things my daughter kept on saying to me is, oh mum, we need to get some puzzles. And I was thinking, what is she talking about, puzzles? And I used to love puzzles when I was younger, to the point where I kept one of my favorite puzzles in a box. So she went online and she was looking through all these puzzles. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we've now set up a table in our front room, and every day we spend at least an hour to 2 hours together working on our puzzles. And over that time, we just, you know, maybe talk about silliness, but also she, like Dr. Martin, she'll pick a soundtrack. And I think Rob can relate to this. So she remembers that I took her to a concert a couple of years ago to see Gregory Porter. So the other day she downloaded his album, and we were listening to that album while we were doing our individual puzzles across the table. How beautiful is that?
That's beautiful. Really beautiful.
What comes to my mind is that famous quote by him, you know, is something like, in adversity, there's always opportunity. And the last few comments is, isn't there such rich opportunity, isn't that, for that connection, for that growth, for that learning, for that development, for me to return to that hobby that I put in a way in a shelf for however many years. There is a beautiful invitation right now. And so I think it's important that we don't consume too much of that. I say to people, stay in touch, sure, with the news, but don't get dragged in, don't get pulled in. And by it is so important. I'm mindful that the learned lawyer and the learned Sir Robert have been unusually, well, I know the learned Darren, you're always a wonderful listener, and Rob listening. Anything you want to just say and add before we wrap up, probably at 15:15 in about 7 minutes or so? Any things that you're wanting to share or add? Anything strikes you from this conversation?
Well, very briefly, it's been very all-encompassing. We've covered caring, we've covered mentoring and inspiration and empowerment. But I think for me, we all want to go back to normality. But the question is, what aspect of normal do we want to go back to? Yeah. And I've been in my loft over the last couple of days doing a clear out and doing a burn up in my garden. And I just really think, how did I get the time to fit all this in? Aside from working, there was charity stuff, church stuff, legal advice stuff, and school governor stuff. And what I'm not going to do is be doing all that and cramming in. Thankfully, I never got sick. I run well, but sometimes you don't get as much sleep as you need, and it can affect you in other ways. So one thing, when the lockdown is over, I'm going to be approaching life completely differently, and not doing all this hectic and fast-paced stuff that life was throwing at me, and I guess all of us. And I just think that this is a good time, as Movell said, to replenish, to take stock, to reassess, to reevaluate. And that's my contribution.
That's a rich contribution, and we'll pay you a heavy legal rate for that at the end of that thing.
I can pass the Rob.
OBE, Robert Neal, OBE.
Oh, catch. I'm just, as people were sharing earlier, Rash, and let me start by saying, just what a wonderful individual human being you are. For identifying this space, for making this happen, for offering opportunity for us to share compassion in this way, to check in and you have facilitated that. You have given us that. You are one of Earth's healers. You give us an opportunity to be all that we can be. And I love you for it. I love you to your very marrow. So thank you, Rasheed Ogunlaru. Thank you. I also want to say that when I look at the screen as people were sharing, and I'm getting better at this thing they call listening. It's a brand new concept for me. But as I approach my 56th birthday, looking almost as fabulous as my wonderful sister, I make up free. I make up free. As I do that, catch, I got that, Olivia, thank you. As I do that, I'm just so taken by how many people on this call that I just love so much, that I have enriched my life, that even meeting for the first time, Darren, Dr. Martin, by the way, I want your top 100 to read, study and bathe in them. I'm sure we've got some in common. We both love Aretha Franklin. We both adore Stevie Wonder. Stephen Morris, the real name. But give me your top 100, please, at some point. And of course, Iris.
Your email, and I'll email it across to you.
I will do. I will do.
I'll email it across to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you in advance. And of course, bumping into Iris. But so many people here that I love dearly, and Frank. And so yeah, it's thanks, Yvonne. Yvonne always gets my jokes first. But to the bone. And I just wanted to say that growing up, surrounded by powerful women in my life, a single parent, my mum took care of us. Dad bailed out relatively early. It wasn't for him. He passed away back in 2017, bless him. And knowing the people in my life that help me through, that give me encouragement, that inspire me, that empower me, that give me an opportunity to spread my wings. Yes, Karen Tidsall, that give me an opportunity to be all that I can be and invite me to share in their gift and their talents, their bayonets, mangoes and beads, and just walk along the road with them and know that I'm almost British. And then when I think about becoming a consultant and I get those moments and those waves of doubt about whether that's possible, I get someone like Movell Dash walking into my life and saying, Rob, come and be all that you can be. We need you at the FCA. And she's made that happen in such a gorgeous way. I'm surrounded by powerful, inspirational, talented and gifted and beautiful women. And by the way, Yvonne, your laptop's on the way. I've ordered it this morning, darling. And you see how surprised she is? But I don't, unless otherwise encouraged to or invited to, I don't split it through the lens of gender, Rash. I have to say that. I've also been inspired by some wonderful men in my life. And whether it be men of action in the church I was with, whether it be through my work with Relate, whether it be by doing stuff with Reach and Reach Society, which is a male targeting concern with using affinity role modeling to encourage our young people. We go beyond boys now, it's boys and girls, to actually remind them that they've always got a choice. No matter what pressures they face, they've always got a choice. And the moral compass is available to us all. And so I don't really put it through the gender divide and that dichotomy, unless I'm invited to. Because one thing I know for sure, even after Dad had left home, even after I was surrounded by these powerful women in my life, and to this day, I'm surrounded by the most gorgeous women in my life, not least of which my wife and my daughter. I also have a son, by the way. But to say, I've always felt loved. And now I need a moment. I've always felt loved. And to have this opportunity at 12 o'clock every Wednesday for a compassion check-in is the most beautiful thing in the world. Thank you, Rasheed, and thank you all for making it today. Love you to the bone. Love you to the bone.
Well, Rob, as always, and just to say, as we head to a close, I just want to say a couple of things. For me, there's something very potent about feedback. Giving people feedback, giving people rich feedback about who they are. is one of the most empowering things you can do. So I'm going to actually end up with giving you all a little bit of feedback. Movell, I know we've only met in person once, but in that meeting, I was so impressed by how clear, how sharp, how strong you are. And hearing also now how you blend that with what you do at home as a mother. I can't even believe you're 18, let alone a mother to an 18-year-old. That's incredible. So I'm going to start there. And Darren, thank you so much for the way that you were able to hold space and listen and be really present. I'm just so thrilled about this, that you happen to read that article in The Voice that I happen to be in. I think the work that you do as a lawyer, giving real good counsel, for me, when somebody's something like a lawyer, you want somebody who you feel that you can absolutely open up to and trust. This is qualities that you have, which makes you very exceptional in your field. So I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. Yvonne, that meeting that one time, the first time we met in person, I think it's something that Rob facilitated. I was just so impressed by there's a combination, there's a professionalism and there's a way in which you deeply care and you think about things and consider things. That's such a powerful quality. Frank, it's funny that I feel as I've only just skimmed the surface of knowing all of these magical things that you have done and that you contribute. It's almost as though you're somebody who could have played so many different things, engineer, could have been probably a musician, DJ, you name it. Lovely. Karen, thank you so much for the space that you provide for others. Through Interchange, the development work is not just about the people development of the organizations, it's that space that you've created, a family of incredible trainers, but also that the journey that you yourself have gone on, one of compassion and heart, takes a lot of courage to go down that journey, to go down that path. And I think it's a very magical thing that you're doing, and just keep doing the magical work that you're doing. Olivea, you already know how fabulous that you are for all the hats that you wear as a trainer, as a wordsmith, and through voice and so on. And I think that the voice, I don't even need to tell you what you yourself know about your magic.
He is an angel in poor disguise.
Exactly. Iris, what strikes me is your strength. It struck me from the first time meeting you as your strength, as well as your humor and your humanity. So thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate that. Dr. Martin, you know already that you're a force of nature. And I just want to say to you all, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Please continue inspiring others. Please do spread the word. Please do return here, bring the magic that you bring to this session, to this time. And please do see it as your time to charge up. And as you go, continue doing the magical work you do, empowering, enriching, and illuminating the path for others. So I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Rasheed,
yes.
Before you sign us all off, if everybody's okay, I've been writing whilst we've been talking, and I'd just like to share it with you. It's just a small piece. Is that okay?
Ooh, please. Yeah, please.
No title, just writing. So.
Hang on. This is a debut. This is an original business. This is a
original business.
A debut. Come with. Hang on a minute.
What?
Can I record it?
No. But anyway, something nice, man. Okay.
We're listening.
Pray, meditate, share, communicate. Dip frazzled nerves in the soothing calm of reflective appreciation. We don't need to be together to be together. Speak my name in the atmosphere. Tell me how much you love me, and I will hear you and send love back to you. Remember our intimacy and joys, forgetting not our griefs and pains, where learning nourished bones. We are connected by bonds that are not ravaged by separation or isolation. I hear your laughter. I know your thoughts. I'm with you, loving you, always.
Thank you. Thank you all for a very involved, inspiring, empowering, compassionate.
Stop the music, DJ.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Are you nuts, Olivia?
We'll come again. We'll come again.
Robbie Thompson. Now, Robbie Thompson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And wonderful that we end that with some.
And thank you.
You're welcome. I just was listening to just little bits that everybody was saying. I've just put it together very, very quickly. So it's a little of something for everyone. But
as the artist that you are, brilliant.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And thank you, Rasheed.
Thanks, Rasheed.
thank you.
And next time our theme is leadership. So I expect to see you all here. I hope to see you all here. Actually, hope. Hope.
Maybe Frank will gate crash again.
Yeah. I'm staying on till then.
Okay, everyone, have a lovely lunch. Have a lovely week ahead.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Enjoy your Enjoy the Easter.
Bye-bye.